Welcome to the Improve Work podcast. I'm your host, Daniela Tancău, an HR consultant helping entrepreneurs and team leaders build motivated, high-performing teams. Here we talk about leadership, employee motivation, and other topics that enhance your ability to lead, whether you are an entrepreneur with a team, a business owner planning to build one, or a leader in a company. You'll gain practical advice and insights from me and my guests, experts in the field and entrepreneurs who share their leadership experiences. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe to stay updated on every episode. Let's dive into today's topic. Hi everyone. Today we'll talk about rationalization bias in the workplace setting. Rationalization bias is defined as the justification of a behavior whose true motives are ignored. And it happens when we explain a behavior without recognizing the real reasons behind it, because this reveals something unpleasant about ourselves. So, for example, we may see ourselves as competent in a specific area, but when we fail to achieve the desired results, instead of recognizing that our skills are not at the level we thought they are, we may explain the failure through other causes, such as I was in a bad mood, it wasn't meant to be, I didn't have enough time, or similar justifications. Rationalization bias can lead to poor decisions, misunderstandings between team members, repeated mistakes, and avoidance of responsibility, all of which can harm the business as a whole. And even though it may seem like a small piece in a large puzzle, and it's often ignored, it can have a major impact on a business success. This bias can be better understood in relation to cognitive dissonance theory, which states that when we are confronted with two contradictory beliefs or pieces of knowledge, we tend to avoid acknowledging facts or data that do not align with our existing beliefs. And let's explore the dissonance theory a little bit more. Cognitive dissonance theory was developed by Leon Festinger in 1957. For him, dissonance is a psychological state that motivates a person to change his or her understanding of certain things. Dissonance causes change because it is unpleasant and produces tension. And in order to eliminate this tension, people tend to avoid acknowledging information that amplifies the dissonance or being in situations that present contradictory facts or data compared to their own beliefs or knowledge. And Festinger and Carl Smith conducted a study in 1959 on forced agreement, a situation in which a person agrees to do something that goes against his or her beliefs. And through this research, they showed that if a person is introduced to do or say something contrary to their own opinions, they will tend to change their opinions to match what they did or said. And secondly, the more pressure that is put on the person to comply, the weaker this tendency becomes. So, in other words, people are more likely to change their opinions when the pressure to comply is subtle. And the participants were paid either with $1 or $20 to lie and say that a boring task was fun. And those paid with $1 later say that they actually found the task enjoyable. So the $1 group had insufficient external justification for lying, so they rationalized internally, convincing themselves they enjoyed the task to reduce their inner conflict. Can you think of a situation where you initially didn't want to do something, but after agreeing to do it, you told yourself that it was actually good that you did that thing? And let's look at some examples of this type of situations. So, for example, a team member is asked to endorse a project idea they don't fully support to maintain harmony in the group. And over time, they may convince themselves that the idea isn't as bad as they initially thought, aligning their opinion with their action to reduce the cognitive dissonance. Or another example, an employee is asked to take on a new role or responsibility that contradicts their career aspirations. And initially hesitant, the employee may eventually convince themselves that the new role is a good fit, especially if the decision was framed as an opportunity for growth. Another example could be a situation where a supervisor pressures an employee to back down in a workplace dispute, even if they feel their stance is justified. And the employee may later rationalize their compliance, convincing themselves that the resolution was in the best interest of team cohesion. Are resilient words or thoughts always helpful? What about what we say to ourselves after a failure or when something doesn't go as we wanted? We can say it wasn't meant to be. If I had received that project, I wouldn't have liked it. If I had been hired by that company, I wouldn't have had the chance to do this now. Or all those bad things happen for a reason. And although these thoughts make us feel better and help us make peace with what we didn't get or what happened, don't they fall under the same concept of rationalization? So we avoid feeling the failure or seeing the actual situation by telling ourselves these things. So where is the problem? The downside of these thoughts is that they prevent us from seeing the real causes that lead us to that unpleasant situation. And without understanding the causes, we can't improve next time. Let's take an example. So, if a person fails an exam after an accounting course, it's not because that person wasn't supposed to work as an accountant. It's because the person didn't have enough knowledge to pass that exam. And the decision to take the course or not, and whether working as an accountant is a good career decision for that person, are separate issues. If the person actually wants to be an accountant and explains the failure as it wasn't meant to be, they most likely won't try to take the exam again. But if the failure is seen as a result of insufficient studying and the person is better prepared next time they take the exam, they increase the chances of passing and doing the work they want. So different explanations lead to different actions. And in the case where the decision to take the course was misaligned with the true professional interests of that person, not passing the exam could actually be a good thing. And in this case, the saying it's not a failure, it's just a redirection, it's actually a good way to view the situation. However, there is still not an accurate understanding of the situation. The cause of not passing the exam is a lack of sufficient knowledge, not the fact that the decision to take the course was wrong. Rationalization bias also prevents us from understanding other people's behavior. So, in a situation where an employee misses a deadline, a rationalization can be that his manager thinks he's just lazy and doesn't care about the job. And the reality may be the employee might be overwhelmed, confused about the task, or struggling with a personal issue. The impact of this is that the manager stops offering support or feedback and the employee's performance drops further. Another situation, a team member resigns without much explanation. The rationalization could be they were never really loyal. And the reality could be they might felt unsupported, underpaid, or burnt out. And the impact, you miss an opportunity to reflect on how the team experience could be improved. How can we prevent the rationalization bias? Let's see some ways in which we can do this. So we can practice self-reflection. We can take time to reflect on our decisions, behaviors, or actions. And we can ask ourselves questions like, why did I make this decision? Is there something I'm avoiding or justifying here? What I am feeling right now about this situation. So, for example, if a team member is consistently underperforming, a leader might initially rationalize the situation by thinking they are just not trying hard enough or they are not a good fit for this role. But through self reflection, the leader may ask himself or herself, why am I jumping to this conclusion? And they might realize that they haven't provided enough support or clear expectations, and perhaps they haven't offered sufficient feedback. And by reflecting on their own actions and role in the situation, the leader recognizes that they can improve their communication and support to help the team member. Another thing that we can do is to ask for others' opinions and feedback. This practice helps us become aware of different perspectives and understandings of a specific situation, identify blind spots, and potentially change our own perspective. So, for example, as a manager, you might think you are being clear and assertive with your team. However, after seeking feedback from a team member, they share that they often feel micromanaged and lack of freedom to make decisions. You might be tempted to rationalize this feedback, thinking, I just want to ensure the work is done right. Or maybe they are just not used to my style. But acknowledging their perspective and asking for more specific examples, you may realize that your leadership style might indeed be limiting their autonomy. This feedback helps you refine your approach and trust your team member more, leading to improved motivation and productivity. Another way to prevent this bias is by taking responsibility. We can ask ourselves, what's my part in this? And by trying to find out how we contribute to the situation and what we can change in our behavior, attitudes, or responses to improve the situation. And an example for this could be a situation where a project deadline is missed. And instead of blaming others for not meeting the deadline, we can ask ourselves, what's my part in this? And perhaps we didn't communicate clearly about timelines or failed to delegate the task effectively. By identifying our role, we can adjust our approach, improve time management, or set clear expectations for the future. Another way to prevent this bias is by questioning our beliefs. We can look for facts and data that may contradict our way of understanding a certain situation. We can also try to reframe the situation in different ways to gain different perspectives. So, for example, if a project is delayed and you believe the team members are not working hard enough, you could challenge that belief by gathering data on workloads, resources, and external factors affecting the timeline. You might discover that the team's workload is too heavy or the timeline was unrealistic from the start. And reframing the situation helps identify what needs to be adjusted to get the project back on track. Being able to recognize the rationalization bias adds tremendous value to our capacity to understand the real reasons behind our thoughts and behaviors. It will also help us prevent making decisions and behaving based on inaccurate data. And in a business and a workplace setting, It will impact the decisions we make, how we understand our team members' behaviors and our own, and how much responsibility we take for our mistakes and failures. And by becoming more aware of this bias, we can create a more honest, transparent, and effective work environment. Thank you so much for watching this episode. If you found value in this podcast, one way to support us is by subscribing. For more tools and insights to enhance your leadership skills and your employees' motivation, visit my website at improvework.ro. There you'll find a variety of online programs and courses. You can also book a free consulting sessions or a discovery call with me. I love to connect and support you on your leadership journey. See you in the next episode.